There's an end to your darkest day. You will see colors.
Hi, I'm Willem, aka Headhunterz. I make hardstyle music and I live here in the Netherlands, and today you are my guest and we'll be looking at a project I did this summer called Colors featuring Tattoo, and I'll explain some stuff to you, how it's done. This track actually was at first a pure intro for a big festival called EDC in the States. I was gonna play there this summer, and I wanted to make an intro for myself, because in hardstyle music it's very common to have very like cinematic narrative intros, and in the States that is still not happening so much. So I was like, I'm gonna do this for myself, I'm gonna take the initiative myself. So what I did was I invited my my American voiceover guy to do a cool text. I wrote it myself, and when the intro was done, I was like, oh, but wait, like, as Headhunterz, I always start my sets with one of my own tracks. And especially on a party like this, I wanted to start with something new, so it had to be something of myself. And I was like, why don't I mold this together? I make like the intro, and I immediately make a new track behind that. So that became Colors. Yeah, actually, well, the whole track started with the vocal, obviously, with my American voiceover narrative guy.
Prepare for a paradigm shift in your consciousness. Open your mind to a new kind of energy. An energy that will increase your heart rate by a significant amount. Surrender to the sound that speaks to your innermost being. For it is time to bring you the music that comes from within. This is the sound of Headhunterz.
Yeah. So the funny thing about the vocal is that actually I get a lot of messages from people always asking, how do you edit your vocal, your voice when you do such a deep vocal? And they actually expect that I did it myself, or that whoever, you know, can do it, like that they can do it themselves, and just that there's like a secret plugin to make these kind of voices. But it's not. It's actually the guy has this deep voice. It's incredible. I'm like, it's so weird to have him on the phone, for example. When he calls me, it's like, oh my god, can you just tell me a few more sentences, because it's so soothing, you know. He is the greatest voice. So yeah, that's it. That's his natural voice, and after that I got really inspired to make the track right behind. Yeah, I can tell. I see that I don't have these plugins on it anymore because I rendered it. But actually what I didn't do a whole lot about this voice. I mean, he, at his home studio, he has real good recording equipment. So when I get the vocal, it's already in pretty good quality. I always ask for the vocal as dry as possible. But I mean, when somebody has a good mic, you don't have to do a whole lot of EQing. I probably just put some extra high in it, because especially in hardstyle, I don't know, like in other dance music as well, the high is just like really pumped, you know. It's like shh. So when you have a vocal that's really like a little bit dull, then it won't stand out so much. So there's some extra highs in it, and a de-esser probably. And a whole lot of compression. I mean, I just love compression on vocals, so I just smash it. I think with this one, I even I ran it through the distressor. But I mean, I think it can be done with whatever compressor. I just like twisting the knobs. The thing was that the intro, I wanted it to have a cinematic feel, but it also had to be musical, and also has to do something with the track that was gonna come after. I mean, I wanted to implement elements of the intro in the track afterwards. So I made this, you know, simple bell sound. that's just virus, you
Prepare.
know. That's pure virus, and I think it's even a preset. You know, for the really most important sounds of my track, I make like the lead sounds and stuff. I always make them myself. But for these kind of bell sounds, there are so many nice presets out there, and I usually tweak them a bit. But I think there's all these opinions about using presets, and actually I wouldn't know why, because going through presets can be a very inspiring experience, if you ask me. And you know, because all producers tend to have their own way of approaching sound designing, and when you do it from scratch all the time, I think I mean, I can only speak for myself, but you tend to get stuck in a certain way of making your sounds. And if you look at somebody else's work, presets, then you actually get some fresh ideas on how to approach it. So that's what I usually do when I'm, you know, just looking for ideas, sounds. Yeah. The thing is, Virus obviously has its limitations because it's not purely a plugin. It's run from the hardware device. So you can use, you know, a lot of instances from it, but you are limited to one or two channel strips. So, I mean, while you can run all these different instances, you can't just put different effects plugins on every channel. So that's the limitation. So if I want to use it more than once, I just make a sound, you know, render it, and then use it in audio and use the virus again, because I love the machine, and it's just it just sounds so good that I'm willing to deal with that limitation. Well, the next sound actually came in much later, but I've pasted it also to the beginning of the track. It came about a little bit by accident. I had this like silent, like saw organ type of sound. It sounds a little bit like an organ to me, and the thing was, when I turned back the filter, the attack was accidentally on. Like the attack was a little bit open, and it sounded like a little bit like a sliding, like wow wow wow, and I was in love with it. So that became actually a pretty important piece of the track, and it sounds like this. I just love it. It opens up slowly. Yeah. And then later on in the track, it actually finishes. It goes. I love this. It's personally, it's one of my favorite parts of the track. In hardstyle music, and I think it, you know, that kind of became that way because of the kicks that are used. The kicks are taking up a lot of space in your mix. They're using the whole spectrum, you know, all mid frequencies, the highs, a lot of low. So you have to create space in your mix, and how do you do that? Well, by using reverb. So, you know, we just throw a whole bunch of reverb on whatever we do. That's like the tendency. I try to, you know, approach it a little differently sometimes, but I mean, I love reverb. It just makes things sound so big. So on this actually is a big reverb as well, as you heard. Let me see what it was. It's the Valhalla. You know, reverbs are actually devices that usually take up a lot of CPU. So I practically always use them as a send effects. Also because you know, you want to, like, if you ask me, you want to not use 100 different reverbs, you know, you want to use a couple of different types of reverbs, like a big hall, you know, maybe a room, and you want to use them for more instruments. So I always, you know, put them on a send. Actually, most of the times I also use my templates that already have like good reverbs in them. So in this case, it's the Valhalla, and I must say I love the Valhalla. What I do nowadays a lot, and I love doing this because you can use so much reverb without the project actually like drowning in the mix. I use sidechaining after the reverb on the send effects, and I send the sound itself as a signal to the sidechain. So what actually happens is that when the sample is triggered, or the synth, it actually, it pushes the reverb away, and when it releases, then the reverb comes up, and you get this real like big, spacious, but also dry sound, because the sound itself stays dry, and it will make it much more easy to mix. Yeah. What I also do a lot is, after my reverb, I just put an EQ there, just to make sure you don't get a lot of mud in your mix, because with all these reverbs, they're huge, but they also have a lot of rumble in the low. So I just cut it way to like 300 hertz. Makes your mix much more easy to fine tune. The next thing was, when I was gonna make the track, I had the vocal, the singing vocal. I just received a demo from my label Ultra, and I really loved it. I mean, it was a bit alternative, but it actually appeals to me, and the lyrics really appealed to me. So I was like, yeah, let's try something. And it's not your usual vocal for a hardstyle track. But I felt like I could do something with this, so.
When you finally life's neither black or white, and the rain outside turns to glory, you'll see colors, 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 colors. When you walk the sky and the sun comes through, know your greatest days are ahead of you. You'll see colors, 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 colors.
So I had to do some editing on the vocals, because when I got it, the rhythm of the vocal was slightly different. When she's saying colors, 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 she was actually using it different kind of timing for that, and it sounded a bit chaotic. So I had to do some time stretching and cutting to just get it right and logical. But what I actually did, yeah, maybe we can elaborate a little bit on how I edit the vocals. What I usually do is, when I have the vocals, because it's always, I'm gonna make little edits. I'm gonna make like reverb effects and stuff. So when I get the vocal, I immediately send them through a bus, because all these effects that I'm gonna put on the vocal strip are probably gonna take up a lot of CPU. And if you want to copy that to every track where you have a vocal editing part, then it's going to be a very heavy project. I see I used UAD de-esser, a UAD compressor, and some sidechaining. So again, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on the vocals, except for some EQing, not even that heavy. And some compression and de-essing. I'm actually surprised myself that I didn't put so much on it. What I did here at the vocal, I used some more UAD plugins, but actually as send effects, because I wanted to keep the dry vocal and not like really have it too much of an effect with the other UAD plugins. So I use the Cooper time cube here, but as a send. There's also a wet dry switch here, so yeah, I think this is a great machine to use on vocals. It's really spacious, and the Dimension D. Also a very interesting effect. This also, this is. I just wanted to have the effect slightly and not too much, so I used it as a send, because it doesn't have a dry, wet control. And the Space Echo, just an amazing machine for your vocals as well. And then of course, again, a lot of reverb. Well, these things I mentioned are all on different buses. The Cooper has its own effects channel. I can try to look them up. Yeah, here they are. They're all on separate effects channels, and so I can just apply the right amount of it to the channel of the vocal itself, and play around with that. You know, so they all have their very interesting, distinct effect. So you want to have control over, you know, how much you want to apply. I just put it, I mix the effect into the vocal, and I just leave it like that because the vocal is, you know, it doesn't really do like strange changeovers. So when I got the sound right of the vocal using these UAD plugins, I just left it for what it was because I thought it was great like that, and I didn't have to automate that. What I did automate was, you know, effects like delays and reverbs and stuff like that. You know, I always like to make a smooth transition with the vocals. For example, when it ends, I put a long delay there or something, and I automate it, like right here. You know. And actually, there's a lot going on after that. There's like a big, huge melody coming in, but still, if you don't do this, then you'll feel it. You'll feel like it's more like it's happening like this. And if you make this smooth transition with the delay, it feels like a whole. You know, it feels like it's molded together. So actually, what was important for me is to find the melody that fits the vocal. You know, so the next thing I did was starting to look for a melody that really fits, and that became this. That's Virus all the way. I mean, there's, you know, as far as I know, no other plugin or machine that can achieve this kind of sound. It's just so big. It fits so well in the mix. It's so fresh. I mean, if you can't compare this, you know. So and it's not even one layer. It's like 4 or 5 layers of Virus. So I'll explain to you how I did that. So as I said, the whole melody is built up out of I think 5 or 4 Virus layers, and what I did is, because mostly my melodies they exist of chord patterns, and so I split up every layer of the chord in a different Virus layer, in which I adjusted the lead a little bit. So like the top one, that one had to be the most present because that's the leading melody, and the rest I adjusted them a little bit, detuned them a little bit less, so they weren't like too dominant in the whole sound. So the top layer is, I think, this one. That's actually the main one, and it sounds really silly on its own. It's a distorted saw. The thing with this main lead is that the Virus has one distortion type. It's called digital, which really is it's a great distortion. And if you close the filter off a little bit, you get this, you know, it doesn't really sound like a saw wave anymore, but it actually is, and when you take off the distortion, it will sound like that. But I can maybe demonstrate a little bit the difference. Check. There we have the saw wave, and then when you start to distort it, obviously when the filter is completely open, it's too much, and then when you close the filter a little bit, it starts to distort on a different frequency, and that's what you get. I'll demonstrate it. That's the whole trick behind that sound. And then of course some vibrato, and So what we do then is we add the second layer, which sounds like this. That's just a more standard saw way to thicken up the first sound a little bit. It's a slight difference, but it's definitely there, and it thickens up the sound a little bit. That's obviously a different part of the chord pattern, and it just plays along with the first one, and it really, when you play them together, it's already so much nicer. I can demonstrate that. It's getting there. And then we go to the next one. And then obviously when you play those together, the Virus TI in its full glory. Yeah, I think it's a really nice sound. I love this lead, and you see when you use one layer, it's just that. When you start combining those layers, it's so powerful and so beautiful. And I think we have one layer left, and that's the bottom one. Result. Yep. So that's how the lead is built up, and what I do while making that, because I actually make the top layer first of the melody, and what I do is, like a pianist would say, like, this is not right because you're using all these parallel chord progressions, which is, you know, but it sounds great, so I'll just go with it. What you can actually see is here the top layer of the melody right here, and what I do is I start like I would be singing. I start the next layer under it, and I just write it by itself. So I don't think logically how it should be, but I start singing it like da 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 da, and then I think like, the next one should be da 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 da, you know. That's actually this one. It's how I would think of it as I would be singing it, not how it should be played on the piano. And it goes with it pretty well, I think. And that's how I build up the whole chord. So each note is actually played as some kind of a power chord, you know. Yeah, actually the way this melody is built up, you could say it sounds almost like a vocal line with backup vocals, you know, with backing vocals. And the funny thing is, when I used to sing in this kids choir, I remember, you know, I was really young, but still, when I would hear like a melody line or somebody singing, I was automatically thinking of how the backing vocals should sound like. So I was singing in my head when somebody was singing the lead vocal. I was already thinking like, oh, this would be a nice harmony or whatever. So actually, I'm translating that today to my melodies. My lead sounds are pretty much like lead vocals. Yeah, you could think of it that way. We'll get to the effects part in a little bit, but first, before I got to that point, what I used to do is bounce the stems and make them audio, because if you're really pushing the virus its limits, and when you're doing that, you get a lot of glitches normally. I mean, it's just that's normal, you know. So I don't want to be bothered by that. So what I do is I bounce them, so I know that I don't have to be nervous about, you know, if it's gonna make it to the end of the track when I play it without starting to give me problems. So I have these layers here. I have them bounced nicely here, all on top of each other, and that's when I start to send them through a bus where I apply all the effects to make it sound right. The nice thing about the virus is that when you know, when you get it right, and then the virus you have an EQ as well and stuff, there's really not that much to do about it still. It already sounds so amazing. The virus fits so well in the mix. So, you know, not that much EQing is necessary. Like you see, only some high-end edit. And I think on the I low cutted it a little bit, but I can't really, I don't see that here. And then my favorite probably to go compressor is the Oxford one. Whenever I switch this on and I take down the threshold, then it already sounds amazing. I don't have to do a whole lot of stuff about it. But this is actually the normal compression. This is not sidechaining or whatever. This is just to really like make it sound tight, make it a little bit more snappy, and more on the foreground. So yeah, that's what this is doing. It's not compressing that much. I think it's like somewhere around 4 dBs or something, with a fast attack and a fast release. What I see here is that from the main lead we are still going into another bus. I don't remember really why I did that, but that's where the sidechaining is happening. That's where some quick edits are happening. This is what's happening in the second bus where it goes through. And I think the Manly was added much more later on in the project when I was actually fine-tuning, just, you know, to add some real quality EQing with a nice character to it still. It's not really in its extremes. It's, you know, I see that I added some of the real like high-end. When I do that, I either like to use the pull tech from UID or either Waves, and the Manly also has really nice high end, so that's what I usually use it for. And most of the times when I go through the project, I'll find that, for example, the lead comparing to the vocal needs some more highs, or the other way around, so I add that up on top of it to make it sound more like a whole. And then the next thing what I did, in hardstyle music, actually, sidechaining is not happening that extremely as it is in, for example, in a lot of house music. But it does happen, and then more subtle. What I did here is just I sidechained a little bit to give it a little bit more of a pumping feeling when the kick hits. But not like it's ducking all the way so you can't hear the attack of the melody anymore, because it will sound, it won't sound good that way. You know, hardstyle is happening a lot of on the one beat, you know, all the time, bang bang, and so you don't want that to duck too much, you know. And then of course the last thing, and I always try to take that off for a moment when I'm EQing and stuff, but then I start adding reverb and delay. Demonstrate that. So this obviously sounds like it's way too much, but then, like I told you before, I'm adding the sidechain signal that sends back to the compressor and gets the reverb out of the way when the melody is actually hitting the notes. So that's what it sounds like when you start sending the signal. I didn't do it that extremely in this track, but it's still noticeable and it sounds a little bit more controlled. So that's with reverb, and then last but not least, of course, some delay to make it a little bit more dreamy, floating, kind of like. Verb is Valhalla. This is probably the same as I used on the bells. Maybe even a little bit on the vocal here and then. This is just the big verb of the project. The delay in this case is the UAD, the tape echo, and I have to be honest, it is a mono, or it's not mono, but it's it is it's not a stereo delay, but it sounds so awesome. I mean, it's you can't compare it really to another plugin. The way it filters out is just great. So sometimes I even use two of them, one left and one right. But in this case, the melody, the lead itself was already so stereo that I thought like this delay would fit perfectly, and it did. So that is as far as the melody goes. What's maybe interesting to still bring up is that at a certain point in the track, almost at the end, I made some really crazy edits with the melody, and it goes like this. I hope it will play right. These are some crazy edits, and actually to make that I used Isotope Stutter, and that's really a really funny plugin. I compare it a little bit to the Headhunterz, but it's just it works different, and the funny thing is it's very intuitive. It has all these funny presets, and you can just scroll with them. It sends a MIDI trigger, so you can just go and scroll through the presets while it's playing, and it gives all these weird effects kind of. So that's what happened here. It's amazing. And then I bounce that in audio, and I cut it a little bit. I make it fall into place, because a lot of times these effects are a little bit off timing, but it's really funny to play around with. And here, with the second effect, I used an Nexus, and I made just some funny edit, and I used the stutter on it as well, and it sounds like that, and it makes it, adds a little flavor to the whole track for people. I always think when you make a little of these like nice details, and when you have stuff that doesn't like catch your attention the first time you listen it, but then when you've listened to the track like 20 times, you start listening to the details, and you hear different things popping up. So that's what I really like to add in my tracks as well, because it gives the listener a little bit more value for the track. They can listen to it more times before they get bored of listening to it, What I did with the second edit, I actually played the notes of the melody. I played them in the Nexus, just with a slightly different sound, and I just I used the Isotope Vinyl, a really old plugin, a free one nowadays, to make it sound a little bit like it's been played through a really old system, and to make it a little thinner, because it's an edit, it's not the main sound, and then I added, with the Headhunterz, I added a vinyl stop edit. I think these are really overused nowadays, but to use them for little edits is still funny. A hardstyle song usually has a different structure than songs in other genres. Whereas most genres, for example, go chorus and verse and bridge and everything. A hardstyle song is a lot of times built up out of like an intro part, which is completely different from the rest of the track, a break, a climax, a little break, another climax, and then the outro part, which is probably the same as the intro part. So the track, when you listen to a lot of house tracks, I mean, they're also not always built up out of chorus and verses, but the unique thing about Hardstyle is that you could almost say it's two tracks in one, because the intro is a lot of times completely different from the climax part. In this version, the intro is right here, and it comes right after the narrative vocal, and it actually has nothing to do with the melody part. It's just an intro, and it sounds like this.
Is Hardstyle.
So what's happening here is it's a build-up, you know. It is already a very high energy part, but it's working towards the melody part, which is supposed to be the epic moment of the track, of course. The sound you hear in the intro is again made with the virus. I was looking for a distinct type of sound, and you know, a lot of people nowadays are using Massive and stuff, and I tried something in Massive, but you know, I don't know. I tried, like, I couldn't get the sound as big sounding as in the virus, and then in the virus you have all these also these formant type of settings and weird wavetables and stuff. So I started experimenting with that. And I got some really nice sounds out of it, you know, in combination with I think again the digital distortion, which just sounds amazing, and the filter, you know, cut off a little bit back, and I really love this sound. It's different. Yeah, another thing about this track is that because I was seeing it as the first track of my set at EDC at that time, I didn't want it to have too long of a break. You know, a lot of hardstyle songs have really long breaks, sometimes even like 2 minutes or something. But I wanted it to be very energetic and to be you know, rhythmic all the way. So that's what I did, and then the bell sound became sort of the transition from every part to a new part, and it kept being rhythmic all the way. So I really try to keep the structure as tight as possible for the track. So this this is a small arpeggiator, and it's really thin and really high, and I just added it to create some extra atmosphere, to create some like some detail that not everybody would hear the first time they listen to it, but you feel it, and it adds some extra depth to the track. It's a Nexus. I mean, I think Nexus has some great arpeggiator presets. And it actually has a bit crusher over it. I always use different kind of bit crushers. I really like the D16 one, the Decimator, a lot. But this one has a different sound, and I just I played around with it, and I loved it. So it is it's pretty funny because for the kick I have to open Logic. The thing about the kicks is that we use plugins, you know, native to Logic that are just necessary to make these type of kick sounds. And then I just imported to Studio One, so the kick actually goes like this in the track. The funny thing about the kick is that it follows the melody. The kick in hardstyle, in this type of hardstyle, is the kick drum and the bass line at the same time. That's the distinct thing about hardstyle. So what we do is we make our kick, or let's speak for myself. I make my kick, and I import it into a wave editor or just in Studio One or Logic itself, and I grab the tail. I just cut the tail from the attack, and I pitch that, just in audio, you know, and that's what makes this you know, style so distinct. This is actually a trick that made Headhunterz what it is today. Mainly, I mean, the sound. That's what I, you know, started doing in 2006, and nowadays this is like the one of the key things in hardstyle as it is today. What I did is I've actually used Adobe Audition to pitch this kick, and then exported that and imported it into Studio One, because to pitch these type of kicks there are so many harmonics in this kick that are a little bit strange that in Studio One I couldn't get the pitching algorithm right to get it pitched like really and sound good tonal. So what I did is I did it in Audition. I used to do it in Logic, but I think Audition does even a better job. And then I just imported it, so it plays the very basic root note of the melody and goes along with the chords. Yeah, you can have another listen to how it sounds with the. This thing is basically what makes it possible to make these beautiful melodies and have the drop go with the melody, you know. If this trick wouldn't be there, then melodies would be a whole lot more boring to listen to, you know. Okay, so what we have here is a typical hardstyle kick waveform. I can zoom in a little bit. We got you know, very much into detail about what's the perfect form for a hardstyle kick. We've examined these things so much throughout the years, and usually it looks a little bit like this. It is the attack part, and then, you know, we split it in three parts: the attack, and then you have here, you know, like the after attack, the decay part you would say in a normal kick, and here is where in your normal, you know, music. Here is the rest of the space where your bass line plays, and this is actually the tail of our kick. So what we actually do is when we pitch the kick, we look for the best starting point to start pitching. And this is the most tonal part of the kick. So and we start to look where, and we play around with that a little bit. Like, for example, maybe here. Here, and what I do is I just go to this one, the pitching engine, and for example, right now it's da 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 da. So I wanna from dun, 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 that's the first note. I wanna go to dun. So that's 3 semitones. And I pitch that, and it sounds. It's really not that that complicated. And what I do is, like, I pitch every tone I need, you know, and I save these files, and I import them into the project, and done we are. So what we have here is a kick, a complete project of a kick, which probably took me around 3 weeks in total to make. It's a very complex process, and I will, you know, show you a little bit how it's done. Well, I guess that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed it, and obviously if you want to see the full thing, go out and buy Computer Music Magazine number 200. See you there.